Hello everyone, my name is Ebony Robinson. I am coming to you today with the lesson of Saul's disobedience under pressure. This lesson will be taken out of 1 Samuel 13 verses 5 through 14. So if you would just follow along with me. I'm not sure who all has this lesson or who follows these adult Bible class lessons, but if you're online today, I'm praying that you will connect with me and get something out of the lesson today. So I'm going to start off by pretty much going over some of the practical points that is identified in this lesson, and hopefully you will be able to understand what the story is saying and what it's about by me going directly to the practical points. So first I'm going to start off by bringing up the first practical point, which is when we forget that the Lord is with us, our battle against enemy forces will fail. Now, Saul, which this lesson is about, Saul's disobedience under pressure. Saul was currently in a position where he was at war with the Palestinians. And Saul was in a position to where the Palestinians were outnumbering the Israelites. So the Israelites were at a disadvantage compared to the Palestinians. And Saul understood that I'm going to need God in this situation. I'm fearful. I'm not really understanding why this is happening, but I know that I'm going to need God and I'm not going to be able to handle this on my own. So Saul did the right thing like most of us would do. We call on God, right? Sometimes we may not understand why at the moment, but we call on God because we realize we need to. So that's what Saul did. He called on God. And what God did was sent Samuel. Samuel was the spiritual representation at that time to go and help Saul through the situation. So back to the practical point. When we forget the Lord is with us, our battle against enemy forces will fail. So Saul felt the need. He got fearful. So he felt the need to take matters into his own hands. And when he did that, he pretty much presented a sacrifice to the Lord on his own. And even though Saul was given this statue of being the leader of the Israelites by God, he still didn't have the permission to take things into his hands when it came to sacrificing something for the Lord. Only a spiritual person could do that, or a priest, or as we would say, a pastor, or someone of that stature in today's time had that permission to do that in this lesson. And that person was Samuel. And so Saul said, you know what? You're taking too long, God. Let's just say how it is. You're taking too long, God. I feel like right now we're in a position to where we need you to move fast, and you're not doing that, and we're not getting the help that we need in the time that we want it. So I'm going to take things into my own hands, and I'm going to offer this sacrifice to you because I need you to move fast, right? That was a big no-no. So when Saul did that, Samuel then came to Saul. When Samuel arrived, Samuel came to Saul and stated, "What have you done? What have you done? You were supposed to wait on the Lord. You are not to take things into your own hands because you are not in that position to do so, right?" And so what do we do when we get in those situations where we feel like, okay, you know what, I'm going to take things into my own hands. I'm going to try to handle this situation by still going to God, right? I'm going to God. I'm coming to you, Lord. However, you're not moving fast enough. So I'm going to take some things into my own hands. And that's what Saul did. And unfortunately, God didn't appreciate that, right? Sometimes we do things in that manner and we think that God is still pleasing of it, and that God is smiling at us because, oh, okay, she moved things a little swift on her own and she's taking initiative, and she went down there to that church and gave a $500 donation instead of waiting on me. Well, that's when God is not telling you to do it, then he look at that as disobedience, period. And so Saul was being looked at right now in this moment as being disobedient. And so when we forget that the Lord is with us, our battle against enemy forces will fail. Our battle against enemy forces will fail. So overall, whatever our overall goal was, or whatever we're trying to accomplish or achieve, it's going to fail because we're not doing it in God's good graces. So practical point number 2 was we should wait patiently on the Lord even if it seems he would never come. We should wait patiently on the Lord even if it seems that he would never come. I'm sure whoever is listening to me right now has been in situations to where they felt like there was things that they needed to move, things that they felt like was taking too long, and they started taking things into their own hands. They went and got the payday loan because they felt like, okay, well, I can't sit here and wait for people to bless me. I'm finna go get this payday loan. And they end up with an interest rate times 10 on the loan that they took out because they didn't patiently wait on God in that circumstance or that situation. Okay, God, well, this car is really seem like it's going out on me, but God has already showed this person that this car is gonna last. It's gonna be okay. You can stay in this car. You're gonna be just fine. No, God, you know what? I just got a raise, God. I heard you, God. I got a raise. Let me go get this new car at this dealership. Okay, now I have a car note instead of this paid car. Now I have a car note with a high interest rate because I didn't wait on God. So there's so many ways, there's so many different scenarios that I can continuously bring up that shows why it is important to wait on God. Okay, God, you're telling me that this man that I'm dating is I have to wait until he's ready? Are you telling me that I have to wait until he gets saved? Or I have to wait till he says he's a Christian before we can get married? Why can't we do this now? We've been together for 10 years. What's really, this is too long. Why do I have to go through this? And what do? You either marry the person and then you find out that this person is not even trying to get connected to God. This person could care less about your spiritual or your Christian relationship with Christ, and he's causing all kind of hell and havoc in your life. So ultimately, do not be that Saul that's so disobedient to where you cannot wait on God. You do not want to be that person that have to face the wrath of your choices. Again, your choices, face the wrath of your choices because you choose to be disobedient to God's word and simply saying it's taking too long. Who are we to say it's taking too long? Our plans should never replace obeying God's word. Your plans. Okay, excuse me, your plans? Who are you to have plans in the first place? God has the plans. God holds everything that we want to do, everything that we're desiring to do, that we think we're desiring to do. God knows what's best. So if we can just get out of ourselves for just a second and realize that, wait a minute, I don't know the plans that God has for me, so how can I make plans for myself? Let me go to God and understand what it is exactly that he has for me to do. What it is exactly that he wants me to be, this person or this Christian that he is desiring for me to be. Let me get a good understanding before I start moving. Next thing you know, you look up and you're trying to get into position of the choir director, when God simply asks for you to be in the kitchen over leading people to cook. But you're not staying in your lane. You're not understanding your position because you're trying to move on your own instead of just simply waiting on God to put you in the positions he needs you to be in, so that when he moves, it's moving effectively and not taking 10 to 3 years and going backwards because you chose to move when you chose to move. So our plans should never replace God's plans. I don't care how great and how wonderful you think they are. They're not greater and they're not better than what God has in store. So no amount of sacrifices can take the place of obedience to God's word. Sacrifices. What did Saul do? He sacrificed. He went before God with a sacrifice. And God is saying, there's no sacrifice that you can do when you're being disobedient to me in the first place, right? So you can't come to me with, there's no sacrifice that can take place of me telling you to be obedient. You can't come to me in all your mess. You can't come to me disoriented. You can't come to me with a filthy heart when I'm telling you to do something and it's clear because you are in the position to hear me, but yet you choose to do what you choose to do. God says no. My word takes precedence over your disobedience. My word takes precedence over the amount of sacrifices you think you made, or you think you at the church till midnight, so you're doing something. God says, what I'm doing, my word takes precedence over any actions that you think you're sacrificing. So make sure that what you're doing is in alignment. Don't try to move on your own. Don't try to say, okay, God, you see me? You see me? I'm up here. I'm doing the will and the work of the Lord because I'm up here at this church. Okay, God, look at me. I'm doing something. I'm out here at the park. I'm out here working with these kids. Okay, Lord, I'm doing something. I'm out here studying late at night. Lord, I'm doing something, but ain't nothing dwelling in your heart. Everything is to be seen. There's really nothing in you that's saying, this is what God told me to do. Everything that you're doing is what you told you to do. So that's a problem. So when we step outside of what God has shown that he requires of us, he will be displeased with us. Sometimes we feel like, oh, it's God, he's gonna forgive us. We could just throw those sins into the sea of forgiveness. However, you got to realize he will be displeased. There's several things that can come with being displeased. So what happened to Saul when he was displeased with Saul? So what happened with Saul? I'm trying to find it here in the lesson. Bear with me. Saul was taken out of his position. Saul was not able to lead anymore. Saul had to step down, stripped of his rights. And guess what Saul decided he was going to do? Since, okay, well, I lost my position, I lost my rights to do this, I lost my entitlement, then I'm just going to keep being disobedient. So Saul fell into that slot of being disobedient, and he continued to be disobedient in the process. Oftentimes when it happens to us, God says, you know what, you were disobedient, so I'm going to pull you out of this position that you're holding right now at this facility or at this church or at your fellowship. I'm going to pull you out of that. I'm going to pull you out of that position. And what do? Okay, fine, pull me out that position. I'm not going to go here anymore. I quit. I'm not paying my tithes and offering. Oh, you know what? I don't have nothing to say to the pastor. Oh, I don't have nothing to say to her. She over the ministry now. She can handle it. She can do it on her own. I don't want to have nothing to do with it. That's us falling into those situations where we feel like we're just going to continuously be disobedient. Right? We're just going to continuously, we're going to just turn our heart into just blackened, hardened heart and just say, forget what God's talking about. Since I can't do what I want to do and the way I want to do it, then I'm just going to say, forget it. And I'm just going to keep being disobedient. Not okay. Not okay with God at all. Let me go to the next practical point. When we disobey God's word, we would not be blessed to carry out his will. I just said this. Saul was taken out of the position. Now, let's get it clear. We're talking about God. So, God's whole purpose of sending Samuel was to help them with the Palestinians, right? Because the Israelites was at a position where they was feeling defeated because the Palestinians had large numbers of people coming their way. Let's not get it twisted. God still delivered them out of that situation. Okay, God still brought Samuel. He still put them in the position of a different king, David, and he also delivered them from the Palestinians, from the forces of the Palestinians. So Israelites still took the winnings or the victory over that situation. So God's still going to do what he's going to do and what he said he's going to do. However, Saul, on the other hand, was not in a position to lead anymore. So when we disobey God's word, we would not be blessed to carry out his will. David was put in a position after Saul to carry out the will. So I'm coming to the point where I really want you guys to understand, because as I come to an ending, that despite anything that we feel like we have control over, or anything that we feel like, oh, I'm going to just go to God with this sacrifice, I'm going to fast for 10 days because this is really what I want. This is really what I want, so I'm going to just fast, and I know God going to hear me, and I know he's going to bring the situation for me. If that's not what God said he has for you, you can fast all day long. What was that practical point? Where that practical point at? No amount of sacrifices can take the place of obedience to God's word. So if God is telling you to do something, if you are reading his word and it's very clear because you have that spiritual connection that you need to have in order to hear him in the first place by reading his word, if he's telling you to do something, then you cannot do any sacrifices that's going to replace his word. I mean, it just is what it is. So let's remember to take things seriously when we're needing to be obedient to God. Let's remember that we don't want to fall into the same situation that Saul fell under, being somebody that was so eager to win that he decided to be disobedient. Let's continuously wait on God, understand what he has for us, and understand that when he puts things in place in our life, then it's going to be victorious regardless. I appreciate your time today. I appreciate you joining in and horning in onto this message. I pray that something was received, and I'm praying that blessings and protection over your lives and your spiritual connection with God from here on out. Thank you.